One.
A couple of days ago, we covered the unusual, even by media standards in reporting of this war, unusual fake news moment where Hamas announced or told the world media that Israel massacred Palestinians while they were going to get aid that was distributed through the new mechanism, which is a mechanism that does not bode well for Hamas in their attempts to control all humanitarian aid. So they announced this. It turned out to be a complete fabrication. Not like the El Ali hospital bombing, where there was a rocket that fell on a parking lot near a hospital and some people died and we saw a big explosion, which turned out to be a Palestinian rocket that misfired. Here, nothing happened. Not a shot was fired, and it was reported as a massacre. Well, later on, there were some, not retractions, but kind of maybe, this information is not 100% verified, but we're reporting it anyway, kind of thing. We will read a little bit of what the BBC had to say about this. Um, but yeah, that didn't stop any of them from reporting additional massacres that did not happen from the same source that reported the one a couple of days ago, and the Al Ali hospital bombing, and the people who actually started this war and refused to end it. Welcome to the reality show. I'm Razi Ginsburg. Yeah, we are covering another story of complete fake news. Unbelievable, really, the world we live in. And we're seeing this, of course, in weeks of repeated stories that have no basis in reality, being told and being reported. And the results are coming in DC, in Colorado, in London, and yeah, the media is achieving its goal. I'm joined by Michael Kaufman, James Valiant, Jonathan Honig. Jonathan, your thoughts?
You got the all-star team with you today, Razi, and I'm happy to see so many super chatters and posters and monthly supporters filing in on our chat because we always love that feedback as well. I mean, it seems like another situation whereas even if it's not true, it fits enough of the narrative that for most young people, most Hamas and Palestinian supporters, it might as well be true. I think we've seen this phenomenon even in American politics as well. It's like even if there is a retraction made, even if it is proven to be, as it is, demonstrably this so-called massacre, it didn't happen. I think, for many people, advocates for the Palestinians, advocates for the Gazans, it might have well has been true because it just fits in with this narrative that Israel is this homicidal war machine, just mowing down civilians at will, and of course, without any context of the war, who started the war, anything. But it's like fits in with the context of what they want to believe, so they believe it, whether or not it's been retracted or not.
I have to read these comments. Somebody says, "You have done yourself this time with the thumbnail, Dan." And with thumbnails like this, I don't get why these don't get more views. I'm sure Daniel appreciates the compliments, but it was Irene who made this thumbnail this time. And yeah, but yeah, on behalf of both of them, thanks. And it doesn't get more views because it's not shared enough. So if you're watching now, like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, share, and share on X, because when you retweet something on X, the potential for user-driven virality is there. It is not there on YouTube, but more people will see it if you share it on YouTube as well. Usually I wait till later in the show to do this kind of stuff, but why not? Michael.
Well, I think there's two huge issues. I mean, the first one is the sort of reality-based one, which is if Israel wanted Gaza gone, it would be completely repopulated and partially rebuilt by now. I mean, Israel has the wherewithal to completely annihilate Gaza within the first week of this war, just like when Americans did shock and awe and took out Saddam Hussein. We of course didn't win the peace because we don't know how to do any of that, and we're idiots thinking that Western values can be implemented on people without any education, without any training in Western thought. But we certainly could win the war. And Israel is the same kind of war machine. I mean, it's got more advanced fighters than we had back then. And Gaza is not that big. It could be gone in one fell swoop, and it could have been. And it's the kind of, there's an adage here in Israel that if if Israel put down their arms, there would be no more Israel. If Gaza put down their arms, there would be peace. We never said if Gaza put down their arms, there would be no Gaza, because Israel has no interest in attacking Gaza. We don't want to bother with it. It's not of interest to us. So that's the first thing, the practical, obvious thing. And the second one is, and I don't know where the watchdogs or the people that are supposed to hold folks accountable and I guess now in the age of social quote, these social platforms, it doesn't really matter if you're factually correct. It just matters how many views you get, of course. And I'm not trying to be stupid about this. I just think that at some point, if the legacy media in particular, the mainstream media, or what used to be the mainstream media like BBC and Wall Street Journal and the Associated Press and all, want to retain any credibility and eventually any viewership, they better start to get the truth. And when facts are easily verifiable or shown, the things that are touted as facts, especially those coming from terrorists, then they should be held accountable in some way. And the fact that they don't retract, I mean, we all know that underlying all this is anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment and just kind of this love for Hamas terrorists, and frankly, all things Iranian terrorist based. But there are two big issues here, and one's the common sense one, which says if Israel wanted to annihilate people, they sure wouldn't have waited to distribute food to do it. And the second one is, of course, that the media has so frequently been wrong, and now they're actually becoming, it's pathetic.
Yeah. And wrong is even it's a compliment. They don't deserve to be called
No,
wrong.
they're not
I
wrong.
don't think
Fabricated.
yeah. And yeah, thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Gail, for the super chat. James, you and I had fun on the Daily Objective talking about that amazing operation from Ukraine. And you know we can't have nice things. So now we're going to talk about something that you and I have talked about on so many shows over the past year and a half. That's why the title is what it is, because again, this is something that is happening so regularly and you know, I think back to George W. Bush messing up, fool me once, shame on you. Like I don't know how many times we've been fooled if we call this being fooled rather than, wanting to buy this bullshit.
Yeah. How many lies do you let the other side, did you report and you get burned on, do you let them get away with before you just say, no, you're just as much of a dishonest entity as your source is? I mean, we're well past that point now. Now they are absolute liars themselves. Not only are Hamas and their supporters in the Middle East lying, but all the Western outlets. I mean, I wake up this morning and I look at Yahoo News. I'm just getting through it. I've got the headlines on Yahoo News. And for them, it's simply a fact. Israel is massacring innocent civilians as they're trying to get this food aid. And it's because Israel is not distributing the food aid in the way that the UN approves. And that's just the accepted. So the folks at Yahoo News, I mean, not just the BBC, not just, these important Western outlets that we take on all the time, they are liars. They are lying intentionally. They're spreading misinformation on purpose. Michael was talking about how, we really didn't understand how to nation build when it came to Iraq because of their culture. Think of how there's far less excuse when it comes to Western universities. When it comes to the universities in my country, in the United States, they don't have this excuse. These are PhDs who have all the information available. So when it comes around and they're now reporting for the umpteenth time from the same source that has been lying to us consistently about Israel, no, there's no excuse anymore. These people are lying because it's connected, Jonathan, to a bigger moral truth, isn't it? We all know the moral truth. Israel are the aggressors. They're the bad guys. And so it doesn't matter what the factual details are, really. In fact, we can fudge those, we can lie about those. It feeds into this narrative. And even if civilians are getting attacked, threatened, I mean, this monster who set ablaze people in Colorado saying that he's after all Zionists, or this couple who gets shot down in Washington, D.C., or the governor of Pennsylvania, who happens to be Jewish, has his home set on fire during Passover. When do they take moral responsibility? These people who repeat lies, lies that can only inflame people, uninformed people, people who are blind to moral truth. But what they're doing, the effect of what they're doing, is to put Jews under threat in the United States, in Canada, in Great Britain, the so-called civilized world. Their lies are having a bloody, violent impact. And every single one of my Jewish friends, every single vocal supporter of Israel is under threat today in the so-called most civilized countries in the world, because we let them get away with what is obviously outright dishonesty. We are long past the point where we can give them any excuse. Well, this is what the Hamas health ministry told us. This is what Al Jazeera told us. No, bull. That you are now active supporting active liars. And these lies are having deadly consequences right now in so-called civilized countries. Absolutely outrageous. And they should be held to moral account for their dishonesty and the consequences of their dishonesty. Yes, of course, they're not the ones who set people ablaze or pull triggers, okay, or set the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania on fire. They're the ones, though, who are giving it moral support, and they're lying about facts that are absolutely inspiring people to do violence in what are supposed to be the most civilized countries in the world. Absolutely despicable and outright dishonesty. Dishonesty causing death right now in so-called civilized countries.
Yeah. Even when we talk about the most depressing topics, I do like it when there's some comedic relief in the chat. Vic the Donkey is firing on all cylinders today. He says, if people in Gaza are called Gazans, are people in the West Bank called West Bankers? Well, in the British slang portmanteau of that, they'd be, well, we're not going to say that because this is a family show. But Jonathan, back to more depressing things. You're in Chicago. I remember it was weeks after October 7th, that there was a Matisyahu concert in Chicago that was sold out, that was canceled because of what? Because he's a Jew. And you've seen these protests in Chicago. They're everywhere. It's one thing to see them in Europe. Seeing them in America is particularly scary, even for us in Europe who see America as the only hope, and that hope is dying.
And that violence that James alluded to really starting to pop up and emerge in all over America. And I was trying to think of like what kind of objectivist ideas, objectivist principles underlie all of this. And throwing it out there, one of is obviously egalitarianism. Like, why are people so sympathetic to those whose explicit goal is to murder others? And why is there sympathy? Well, that's, there's that seeing every culture as equal. There's obviously altruism. Why are you giving food to people who attacked you in the first place? Why are you giving aid to people whose explicit express goal is your annihilation? The third one, I don't know the right word for it, but it's the winning unwinnable war idea that, Rand has that essay, Doesn't Life Require Compromise? And there's this almost insistence, even in the civilized world now, that, look, Israel's got to give up a little bit here, and the Palestinians we're going to come to some compromise here, as against actually winning the war, destroying the ideology. And, it's been a long time since I picked up that essay, but, what I seem to remember was Rand saying, of course, you can compromise on, do we go to Thai food or sushi tonight? Or, do we compromise on, is it 10 feet tall or 7 feet tall? But you don't compromise on basic values, on fundamental, essential values. And as long as the other side's values is your destruction, what is there to compromise on? And any compromise is your own death. And it's happening, obviously, in Israel. Michael was mentioning, he's so used to the sirens now that it's just part of his daily life is, air raid sirens. But now in these attacks, against Jews and who knows, others, Westerners in the West popping up. Scary, scary time.
That article, Jonathan, what Ayn Rand says is that when it comes to moral principles, compromise is deadly. Life requires that we reject compromise. And what she said is what life requires is that we never fail to pass moral judgment when it's appropriate. And that is precisely, in fact, it's worse than failing to pass moral judgment. They pass moral judgment against Israel, regardless of the facts, even knowing that they're lying, or at least being reckless with the truth. And they'll just keep it up because their moral principle is against civilization. There is no compromise when your moral principle is anti-life, anti-reason, anti-civilization. And of course, your focus will be, right now today, your focus will be Jews. Jews across the world have a big fat target on them because of the moral principles that young people are taught in my country today. You do not compromise with evil. In fact, you morally judge evil for what it is, or expect more. Civilization is under attack, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on in the Middle East is the front line of the war to defend civilization. Keep that in mind.
Michael, one of the trolls in the chat says half of this stuff would make sense if Daniela Weiss wasn't illegally expanding the West Bank. First of all, I'm sure she is thrilled that you give her all the credit, but this is a thing that's kind of consistent. And if you talk to people who are government officials in Western countries who are criticizing Israel, they don't say that they want Israel to cease to exist. They talk about the 1967 borders. They talk about the settlements. If you talk to the more ideological people who actually are Palestinian ideologues, to them the whole thing is a settlement. It's the problem. They're explicit about the problem being Jews living, and supposedly specifically Jews living in a place that is not their land, i.e. all of this belongs to a race and the Jews are not a part of that race. Therefore, they either leave or get killed.
Well, that's the common thing among Western kids, just out of college, is that Israel is all stolen land and it all belongs to the Palestinians, the Arabs anyway. So anything they do is illegitimate. Even any self-defense is illegitimate because they're guilty from the get-go, simply by hence that they happen to be Jewish.
Yeah. Michael, your thoughts generally on how settlements are used, to basically by those who are supposedly, only care about, bringing about peace. Settlements are the obstacle, not the murder of Jews and the desire to do nothing in life other than to murder Jews. That is not the main issue. It is the settlements.
Yeah, this is the crap we've been hearing for decades. As if the Arabs weren't settling places either. There are whole neighborhoods in Israel that are settled by Arabs that, they buy the places or they mostly lease land in Israel and so on. But it's just to obscure the usual facts. I'll get to it a little bit more in a minute, but I think it's important to go back and just reiterate what James and Jonathan said. And I would take you back a little further. We alluded to it, but I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or a doomsdayism. Let's be very clear, though. The humanities departments at liberal arts colleges have been teaching critical race theory, DEI, and all of the affirmative action baloney that is anti-meritocracy, anti-capitalist, anti-success, and basically pro-misery and pro-destruction for decades. It's been growing. It is well engrossed now in their curricula. You heard the Senate hearings. You heard the president of Harvard saying that it was okay to be anti-Semitic as long as the context was appropriate. She, I'm sure, has never in her life said it was okay to be anti-Black as long as the context was appropriate, or anti-Latino, or anti-gay, or anti-transsexual. She never said that. She never will say that. She will go to her deathbed at some point in her life never having said any of that stuff, but being anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic is perfectly fine because the context. And she is a full professor at what used to be considered the top university, at least in the US. No longer anybody with half a brain realizes that place is a total, complete disaster. And
Oh, no.
I can discuss the medical research in detail at any time anybody wants to. I'm
Yeah,
happy to do
James,
it.
I just
But
want to first, I want to get, yeah, so the point you're making, look, a big part of what they've been doing is making sure that words do not mean what they mean in how they're used. And I see Seeking here in the chat saying liberals are naive, and I'm gonna nitpick at that because they're not liberals.
they're not naive.
If you're in the
This
streets,
is
they're
this
not
is
liberal and they're not naive.
correct. This is absolutely fully prepared. And by the way, as soon as they're done annihilating the Jews and the Christians, because they're on to the Christians too, and you see this here and there, they're going to take out America because America is on stolen land. We, the terrible Americans, took it from the Native American Indians. Call them whatever you want. Okay? We took it from them. And the fact that the entire history of the human race has to do with people taking land from other people and having wars, and that's the way it all worked. And thank God we got to Western thought when it finally made sense that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the basic foundations of Western thinking and objectivism, by the way, are actually the only real defense against the strong man coming in with a bigger bomb and a bigger rifle and taking people out. And the fact of the matter is, if Israel wanted to take over all of the settlements tomorrow and completely demolish all of the Palestinian areas, it would be no problem at all.
Yeah. James, just
This-
one. I'm gonna
this-
get you.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
No, I'm
Michael,
good.
you want to finish the thought? I wanted just to get to another chat comment, and then I'll.
Yeah, I just realize people have to stop at thinking this is something new. The goal of that Harvard president, I'm here to say it publicly. I'm happy to go against her at any time. Her entire mission in front of that, and including the mission of the Columbia person, and I can't remember if it was MIT or someone who the third or NYU or some of the other, enlightened university presidents. The entire mission there was to justify violence against Jews. And they succeeded. The fact that it took a few months did.
I would pay money to see Dr. Kaufman debate the president of Harvard University.
There's nothing to debate. She has a plan.
Yeah, and all I was going to add was that, yes, at all of the private universities in my country, all of them, you'll hear advanced seminars on the oppression of indigenous, that's the term, indigenous people.
Indigenous people.
We all know who the indigenous people of the Middle East are, and they can't be Jewish people. No, even though Jewish people have lived in the area
for the longest. Yeah.
No. The indigenous people are the Arab Muslims, don't you know? And we create the definition of what a Palestinian is out of whole cloth. Within my lifetime, the concept came into being. And they'll teach you, I'll just only slightly exaggerate. You can take an advanced seminar on anti-Semitism at any private university in this country. They are Michael is exactly correct. That's what we're teaching them at university. Anti-civilization, anti-reason, anti-private property, and it's those evil capitalist imperialists. It's this Marxist intersectionalism crap that is being fed to our young people at every university whose name you can recognize in the West. And what do you suppose the result is going to be? But violence against Jews, even in these so-called civilized countries. Not to mention, of course, repeated lies about what's going on in Israel. It has to come a point where Israel just stops giving a damn. Really, there has to be. Otherwise, I fear for the future existence of Israel. Just for God's sakes, fully occupy Gaza, fully occupy Judea and Samaria, all of it, now. Get it over with. These savages are not fit to govern themselves. Full stop.
Well, I would say deport, but I think we have a debate on this show that we've been talking about doing, and it will come at some point, the deportation debate. Michael, I volunteered you to be on my side of this, and James, I volunteered you to be on the other, and it'll be a great debate when it comes. But Jonathan, yeah, how? Actually, let me give me a second. I'm gonna ask it this way. So PB Law says in the chat, Israel not denying these lies effectively, which is true. 2 days ago, when the first massacre that didn't happen happened, Israel took pretty much the entire day until I mean, they put out some security footage and then they said we're investigating it. The same thing happened with Al Ali on the hospital bombing where 500 people died and turned out to be a Palestinian Islamic Jihad misfired rocket. But that's on the one hand. On the other hand, how do you um, how do you answer reporting like we're about to see in this clip? That's me setting it up. There it is.
Tom, I'm currently 10 miles outside of Beaverton, unable to get inside the town proper. We do not have any reports of fatalities yet, but we believe that the death toll may be in the hundreds of millions. Beaverton has only a population of about 8,000, Tom, so this would be quite devastating. Any word on how the survivors in the town are doing, Mitch? We're not sure what exactly is going on inside the town of Beaverton, Tom, but we're reporting that there's looting, raping, and yes, even acts of cannibalism. My God, you've actually seen people looting, raping, and eating each other. No, we haven't actually seen it, Tom. We're just reporting it.
All right, the volume on that was a bit low, but I think our regular viewers, have definitely seen this clip multiple times. I think the last time we showed it was 2 days ago. So yeah, Jonathan, do you even do you engage? What do you do when somebody does? Because this is the level of honesty that we just saw in this, beautifully done clip. That is how we're seeing the news reported from Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, the meme that was very popular among 20-somethings and 30-somethings and probably, I'm sure, teens here in America, we shared on the program a day or two ago now, Razi. And the top is the lines of the Palestinians getting in line for food aid. And then on the bottom are the lines to march people to their deaths at the concentration camps in Auschwitz, etc. And they said, there's no difference between these two. I mean, it goes back to what our fellow panelists said about, years of indoctrination. It emphasizes what Miss Rand thought about the power of ideas, the power of the way people see the world. And, that's what my sense is. Most people, for them, the media isn't a focus. It's like kind of on in the background. But as long as it hits that point that they're used to hearing, Israel is a genocide state, Israel is an oppressor, poor Palestinians, Israel willy-nilly just shooting people. Oh, because that's what they do. I mean, if you go to Israel, that's not what you're going to see is random violence. You're going to see the modern rights-respecting country where skyscrapers are being built, where incredible innovations like from companies like Michael's are being created. I mean, this is what is happening in Israel. But for the average 20 or 30-something, they know it as the genocidal state that was built on stolen land and presses people willy-nilly. BFS.
Michael, I see people in the chat complaining. A combination of people complaining how often we show it and saying, yeah, this needs to be shown all the time. And look, I'm also complaining because I want to do, I want to cover topics where showing this clip would make no sense. Unfortunately, that is how the news is reported. And again, we're talking now after a 2-week period of where we saw the 14,000 babies are going to die in 48 hours, and the massacre and the additional massacres and a couple of other things, and of course we saw the results of it in terrorist attacks across America and elsewhere. So yeah,
No, wait, look, I think we have to keep reminding people that the news should be fact-based. And we also have to remind people that yelling fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire is illegal. Now, I understand that there's, all kinds of First Amendment rights, but yelling fire in a crowded theater is still illegal, despite the First Amendment. And what has happened is that we have been yelling fire in a crowded theater. And you take a very small percentage event and multiply it by 330 million people in the US. And of course, there's some crazies that are going to latch onto it and hold on to it. And you don't pretend that anybody is surprised by this. It is being supported. I mean, I was trying to think of what groups in America have actually stood up and said, this is wrong. This is really wrong. And as a group in general, no one has done that. You could say that President Trump, who I used to be more of a fan than I am now, President Trump at least has done something to attack anti-Semitism at Harvard and other places. You can say that there's a DA here and there's some DEI reductions in various places, but you don't hear Jewish groups screaming on the news every time. You don't even hear the people like the Anti-Defamation League getting up there and saying, we are going to hold our political leadership accountable, because this is fundamentally their fault for putting up with this for the last 18 months since the war began. And it was started way before that. You don't hear any of that. You don't hear any of these big Jewish groups with their hundreds of lawyers even saying, we're going to sue the heck out of Harvard and Columbia and NYU and MIT. And we're not going to tolerate this crap where the leadership of MIT pretends they had no clue that the graduation speaker was going to give an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel speech at the graduation ceremony, and then penalizing by not letting her show up the next day. They didn't take away her diploma. This woman should never work again in America. She should be escorted out of this country. She is not interested in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness unless it has to do with supporting terrorists. The only people she cares about are people that are the despicable, murderous, traitorous types of people. If you think I'm crazy, look at the actions in the world. But we, America, and frankly, I agree with it, Israel doesn't even stand up for itself. It investigates. It says, we're looking into this. We fired a few warning shots here and there. And eventually, 24 hours later, it denies it after very clever analysis of, where the sun comes down and what time of day it was and so on and so forth. And the time has got to come when some real leaders in the world stand up and say, we are not going to tolerate this. Here are some legal ways we're not going to tolerate this. And we like it. And again, I hate to use the example. But one thing I love about Trump is he's suing the heck out of CBS for the doctored Kamala discussion that she had. So because of the principle, to the extent he has principles, I don't want to get into that. But my point is he's sticking with it. He's not letting the news get away with lying to people. And where is that happening anywhere else?
Well, this is, James, I want to get to you because you are a lawyer and you understand the law, I don't really, but I there are things that worry me even when it's something I kind of want to hear. Like, for example, there's some talk about CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, being designated a terrorist organization. I don't know exactly how you can designate it a terrorist organization. Can you? Is that, and because again, my concern is, okay, the groups we don't like are going to get in trouble now, and then President AOC is going to, what?
Right. She's going to say the Ayn Rand groups are obviously spreading hate. They're spreading extremism.
They're supporting genocide and starvation and stuff. Yeah.
Well, let's wait a sec here. A lot of these groups are tax-exempt organizations. And if you're a tax-exempt organization, you can't take a political position. That's part of the condition of being a tax-exempt organization. You then file, okay, I'm a political advocacy group now, and I take partisan political stands. And when you hear some of these groups that are funding these demonstrations, these pro-Hamas demonstrations, for example, or CARE, why the hell do they still get tax exemption? These people are promoting political hate. They're encouraging violence. We're now seeing so much violence and threats going on across my country right now against Jewish people. It's unbelievable. And so one of the legal means by which you can do this is take away these organizations' tax exemption. Frankly, you can take away the tax exemption from universities, as far as I'm concerned, because they too are promoting a specific political ideology. which flies in the face of the whole purpose of a tax-exempt charitable organization. They're not merely educational organizations. These are arms of Islamist propaganda. And once they cross that line, they should have their tax-exempt status yanked. And when it comes to free speech, yes, America has a proud tradition of free speech. But look, the way to combat evil free speech is with better free speech. And so even in the conservative media, even on the New York Post or the Wall Street Journal or Fox News, what I hear is, yeah, the graduation speaker who, went off script to attack Israel all on her own, do her own riff. We hear about that. But what they're not covering are how the left-wing media is lying about what Israel is doing. It should be a big headline story. Another lie bought by the New York Times, another lie bought by BBC. Washington Post spreads vile, disgusting lies about what Israel is doing. That should be how the responsive media should be. We do not see nearly enough of that either. So there are legal means of cracking down on this, and we should be using every single one of them when it comes to this kind of despicable, bigoted, anti-Jewish hatred that is now oozing out of universities and across my country.
And I should just say the Ayn Rand Center UK does not have tax-exempt status because we are a for-profit, but if you become a member and we liberate the culture, you will be tax-exempt for the rest of your life. So become a member. There's a link in the description. Jonathan, I just want to get to a point that somebody in the chat is saying AOC running for president would be funnier than any show now on any media. Do not be careful what you wish for. This is what people said about Trump, and it was ridiculous. And he became president. Do not assume that people won't see AOC and think, oh, she's a bit retarded, but I'm a bit retarded. I'll vote for her. She's like me. Do not assume that she can't become president.
Not at all. I'm reminded of something from Dr. Peikoff's podcast. And if you want to really put something on your phone that you're going to really enjoy, go back and dig through. I think Dr. Peikoff probably did 15 years of podcasts, hundreds of episodes. And he made the comment, and James, I know you've read them and you're close with Dr. Peikoff, so remind me if I'm remembering this wrong, but his point was something to the effect that the environmental movement, the ecology movement, was something that the hippies, the beatniks, picked up after the Vietnam War. And that was going to be their new cross to bear, if you will. And I really wonder, after watching some of these graduations at top-notch schools, expensive schools, where the kids pay $100,000, the parents pay $6,000 to go there, and they're with their little keffiyehs and free Palestine. Like, is now the Palestinian movement the new ecology movement that young people are picking up to show that, oh, we're moral?
Well, 25 years ago, Al Gore was telling us about, when it comes to the environmentalist junk, he was telling us we'd all be underwater now, and, Manhattan would be under. So now is there, those time predictions that they were making about, environmental catastrophe haven't panned out. They absolutely do need a new cause, a new way to motivate young people and get them agitated and upset.
Environmentalism isn't gone, James. The time prediction, they were just wrong on the times, like with the 14,000 babies. It's not that, if you look 5,000 years between now and the future, we're not.
Why let pesky facts get in our way? That is off. And, when Miss Rand talks about how it's reason and reality that have to be the foundation, look at what strangers to reason and reality these people can be, whether they're environmentalists or anti-Israel. The facts don't matter. Really, A is A doesn't matter. I mean, they could contradict themselves tomorrow. And you see, well, that's just part of the dialectical reality of our, postmodern, neo-Marxist, whatever. But it is an attack on reason and civilization, absolutely. But yeah, this is the growing cause, especially from academics and people on the left. It is Israel hatred. It is civilization hatred. And that's the underlying theme here. You see how these poor, primitive, indigenous people are oppressed by bringing civilization. See, I don't, you mentioned Michael's work in Israel. I don't expect cures or treatments for cancer to be coming from Iran or Saudi Arabia or Egypt anytime soon. So the heroic work like Dr. Kaufman does in his cancer research, for example, do you really expect that to be coming from these savage countries that surround Israel? No, I don't. And the more I hear from US universities, the less confident I am that anything rational will be coming from them. I mean, we're destroying our own culture. We're destroying civilization in the name of all of this. But yeah, it is their current cause. Yeah. Dr. Peikoff is very much like Dr. Kaufman here. He was a Trump supporter with certain reservations, but he's grown far less enthusiastic about Mr. Trump, seeing him in action. And I guess Mr. Trump now is saying to Iran, well, you get to keep your uranium enrichment, program, because, after all, even though you're an oil-rich country, uranium enrichment can continue there. If Trump buys into that kind of crap, Iran will have a nuclear weapon before you know it. And then what is the future of Israel or the United States, frankly?
But James, all countries are equal. Well, what's the difference? Right? I mean, this is multiculturalism. If it's good for America, why not for Iran? Why not for Iraq? Why not for some savages in Africa? Pick out the worst of the worst. I mean, isn't that multiculturalism put to action? That every country you treat the same because every country is the same.
No, the culture that produces Dr. Kaufman's, who give us cures for cancer, treatments for cancer, okay, that are on the front, like they are fighting for humanity. They're fighting for human life. That is what civilization looks like. It's the application of reason and science to the problem of human survival. Right. It's not giving it, they're not equal. Cultures are not equal. The culture that produced Dr. Kaufman is superior to the culture in Iran. Full stop. Those are savages. We have to use the word. I don't mean it in a racist way. It's not a question of anybody's race. All races can participate in this thing we call civilization, but it means a respect for reason, a respect for civilization. If you want treatments for cancer, you're not going to get it by reading the Quran.
Let me fact check that. So, Michael, is this correct? Because I know in Gaza, for example, they have one of the highest, per capita number of hospitals. Maybe they are doing great cancer research there. No, you probably would know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the. I won't answer. Obviously, it's ridiculous. They have the highest number of hospitals because that's where terrorists hide, and it's you can label anything a hospital. You don't necessarily need sick people there or even any real amount of medical supplies. Thank you, James, for the compliments. I mean, it's not just that. I mean, philosophy, that a productive, constructive philosophy, music, art. I guess some art could come out of some of these barbaric countries, but the kind of music that we all are so wedded to, whether it be classical or more pop type rock music, etc. Certainly knowledge, furthering human knowledge, putting a spacecraft on Mars. Hell, making electric cars something that you can actually buy and charge all along the entire US, the extraordinarily length of the US up and down, and loving Elon Musk while he's a good environmentalist, but hating him when he actually wants to save some tax dollars. It is good that we brought that up on this show. I mean, one of the things that these philosophies all have in common is, and I've really racked my brain since the beginning of this because I've had occasional fights with people. I'm not friends with most of them, mostly liberal Jews, who I said to them, name one good thing that has come out of Iran since the revolution, other than the people that have escaped Iran. And I literally have some employee. I have an employee from Iran in my company, and she's one of our best employees. She escaped. She's a woman. She has a real job. She got a PhD in Spain, and she works in America. I have another woman who actually is from the West Bank. She's Palestinian. I just got her. She's a great scientist, and she wanted to make a life. She said there are zero opportunities there.
For women,
and we all know that. And anybody who is honest, and including the president of Harvard, and I'm using her as the as the an example now, but it's across the board here. I defy anyone to show us on this show or any objectivist what positive good that contributed to the furtherance of the world and human flourishing has come out of any of these countries, any of them, including the ones that are so-called peaceful, or at least on the surface peaceful.
Well,
and it doesn't count if you can build a skating rink in the middle of the desert because you have a ton of oil mining.
You mentioned
Sorry.
art and performing arts. I can't resist. It reminds me of the show we had, Razi, with the Houthis dancing, and I'm reminded of Ayn Rand's comment about folk dance. And I do not mean to offend any culture, but if you've seen one group of peasants jumping up and down and clapping their hands, you've seen them all.
Yeah.
This is why I don't live stream myself watching Maccabi play football. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, James, all mainstream US news media and UK media are woke. Almost all, but the thing is, all are bad in one way or another. And thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Alexa says, did you see that Holocaust monument being vandalized in Paris? What is wrong with these people? I didn't, but was this part of the Paris Saint-Germain celebration of winning the Champions League where people died and by the way, Paris Saint-Germain also have, football or soccer teams in Europe have the logo of their main sponsor on their shirt. Who is Paris Saint-Germain's logo? Qatar. So yeah, that's the airline, but it is also the country. Jonathan.
Well, the show today entitled "Another Day, Another Massacre That Never Happened," but was reported. I think kind of goes to the idea again. I tally back to just like the unbelievable power of ideas and how they set the stage for everything from the medical innovations that these gentlemen are referring to, and why North Korea is dirt poor and South Korea is wealthy and prosperous, and just as even why one's motivation for one's own life. When you're raised from a kid hating the Jews, avenging the Jews, getting back at the Jews, and it's like if you're indoctrinated into that as a kid, like that is your world. I was growing up like, be what you want, explore, it's like, and that's what happens in Israel, to my understanding. These kids are taught to embrace life, to embrace reality, to see its challenges. And that's why, so many innovations have come out of Israel over the years. We could do shows upon shows of the USB drive. I mean, how many times a day do you use Waze, the navigation system? The point is that the anti-Israel crowd, of which is massive and growing thanks to the indoctrination, whether or not these massacres happened or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. They could have happened, and Israel's guilty even if they didn't happen, because Israel's slave culture that oppresses the minorities and is built on stolen land. And they made up their mind sophomore year at Columbia University or at a great university. And this is my opinion, and it hasn't changed since.
Yeah, by the way, Waze, I'm sure there are people who won't use Waze because it's Israeli, just so you know. Google bought Waze. If you use Google Maps, you're also, I'm sure if you use Apple Maps, you're somehow using something Israeli. If you're eating a cherry tomato, that's an Israeli invention. So be consistent, BDS movement. We fully support you in not ever consuming anything ever created by an Israeli. I would love to see how that works.
Really?
Says,
cherry tomato is an Israeli invention? The cherry tomato? I got to look that up.
Tomatoes. Well, but that's it. The Jewish people have been achievers. And so much of today's anti-Israel sentiment is laid on the foundations of centuries of anti-Semitism in Western culture, which is rank. Everyone can see now, and I would ask all of my European friends, think about it, look in the mirror. Centuries of envy, hatred of the good for being the good. Why? Because there were successful Jewish bankers, there were successful Jewish people in the West, and so much of the anti-Semitism is predicated on sheer envy, and that same kind of envy is being echoed today in fancy private universities all across the West, where Israel, you see, Israel is oppressing the indigenous people of the area. Subtext, These people are envious because of Israel's success, because Israel creates, because Israel innovates, because they have a civilized, liberal, comparatively liberal country that recognizes individual rights across the board. That's why. And you see that, well, despite the fact that Israel recognizes the rights of, say, Arab Muslims or women or gays, no, it's because of that. It is because their enemies are such medieval savages that they're being supported. Don't doubt for a second. It is envious hatred of the Jews for their success. And therefore, it's a hatred, as Ayn Rand so eloquently put it. And it's hard for Western mind, benevolent people, to wrap their heads around the fact that these people do not love life. They do not respect life. They are death worshippers. They hate the good for being the good. That is it.
Yeah, Alexis, thanks for sending that. Yeah, I actually did see that. Yeah, I mean, look, some of them do still pretend that it's anti-Zionism. Fewer and fewer are just keeping that pretense. PC says, Razi, do a show on RTE sometime. They are so bad. The problem with doing a show about RTE is I have to watch RTE. We did a show about Ireland 2 days ago or 3 days ago. Yeah, I need some time between, but maybe RTE can do a show about us. I'm sure they will be very nice. By the way, speaking of shows about us or us doing shows, we are doing the Daily Objective and the reality show in what is it? 4 weeks from today, July 1st in Boston. Jonathan, you will be there. Michael, you will be there. I will as well. James, you're not going to be there, but you are going to be at an even bigger event. We're not ready to announce yet, but it's going to be in October in California. And yeah, you should. The Boston event is free, so you should absolutely be there if you're in the area. The California event is not free, which is all the more reason why everybody should be there. Michael, parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I just think when we throw around terms like neo-Marxism and intersectionality and all this stuff, you really have to look at the world. And I again, and we all suggest on this show that you look at Ayn Rand for guidance. You have to look at the world and the people that have helped the human race move forward. And a lot of people have their regular day jobs and they're good people and their families and they build that. That's fine. But then there's a group and a growing group of people that are terrorists and basically anti-human and anti-life. And you should not mince words. In as you think about this yourself, you should look at cultures and what they've contributed to the world. And I say this to a lot of my friends. And I say, why are you applauding that culture? It's not okay to sit here with your iPhone, with your electric car, applauding the fact that we can build spaceships that can now land vertically and talk about vaccines and so on and cures for hepatitis C and HIV people with HIV living a normal lifespan now. It's not okay to say all that and pretend that the cultures that have contributed zero, never mind negative, contributed zero to help us get there are really as good as we are. They're not. Full stop, they're not. And by the way, you're going to get sick at some point in your life. You're going to need what we produced in these cultures, which is generally Western culture with some major contributions from Japan and China and other countries. But basically these cultures to help people live better and longer. And that's what it means. It doesn't mean stealing from the successful to give to the decrepit who don't earn anything. And it's certainly, and this is the new twist, because it used to be we're going to steal from the rich and give to the poor. Now we're going to steal from the rich and give it to the terrorists who want to kill us. And we really need to think hard about what we're being taught in our schools and the absolute moral despicableness, that's a word, of the teachers that are under the guise of academic freedom and insight and professorship teaching this to our kids. Michael Kaufman, 2Fs, LinkedIn. Razi, you're on mute.
James, parting thoughts, where can people find you?
Ditto to what Michael just said there. And it's why, when you walk into any university, why are the focus of their hatred again? Is it Israel and America? Why do they hate those countries more than anything? And isn't it a curious thing that it perfectly overlaps with Iran's perspective on the world? And so these are the people at these fancy universities with PhDs taking exactly the same moral stand as the most savage nation on this planet, Iran. They hate America and they hate Israel and they hate them for the same reason. It's hatred for the good for being the good. It's because they're successful. It's because they're civilized. It's because they're rational. They represent civilization. It's hatred of the good for being the good. I can be found on Facebook answering questions nearly every day. James Stevens Valiant. Hit me up for questions there. Happy to answer your questions on history and philosophy anytime.
Long before there was the reality show, there was the Daily Objective. Jonathan, you were there from the start, not from the first episode, but the first episode was June 5th. So in 2 days, we are celebrating 5 years and we're going to do a throwback. The first episode was titled The Riots. It was about the Black Lives Matter riots. This episode on Thursday is The Riots from BLM to Free Palestine. Make sure you go give it a preemptive like and watch it when it happens. Jonathan, parting thoughts, where can people find you?
Well, and support what we are doing. We are largely volunteers, a few key people who bring you 7 days a week of live programming inspired by Ayn Rand. James, your quote today, I laughed out loud as I did when I first read it, was from Global Balkanization, Miss Rand on folk dance. Again, if you've seen one set of people clapping their hands while jumping up and down, you've seen them all. Such a great, funny line and also great essay to refer people back to. And that's what our goal here is, for you to learn about Ayn Rand, learn about objectivism, pick up some of her work. And for something that has nothing to do with the Middle East, but was produced by Ayn Rand's intellectual heir, Dr. Peikoff, check out Can You Really Love a Dog, which is available at Amazon. You saw my dog here for the first half of the program. I think she went up to look for a snack or another part of the apartment. But for people who say that objectivism is cold and soulless and, you're all Mr. Spock, so objective, pick up Dr. Peikoff's words and learn about the true love between a man and a woman, a person and their pet, and his or her pet, and why it's so special and so valuable. Can You Really Love a Dog at Amazon?
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. The Ayn Rand Center UK is at Ayn Rand Center with the British spelling. That's R-E instead of E-R at the end. Remember, you can share our stuff there and retweet or re-X, whatever they call it now. That will help more people watch it. We post it shortly after it airs. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We're back here tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show. Are we off the air?